Thank you all for coming out this evening. What a turnout. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all. It's really important that we're all part of the solution tonight. My name is Liz Report. I'm the Director of Housing Solutions Network. As a nonprofit, we work alongside housing providers, many of which are in the room. If I could see a quick hand. Thank you. Partners, employers, and community to advocate for affordable housing across all sectors of the housing landscape. But before we kick off tonight's event, I wanted to take a moment to tell you all about a dear friend and housing advocate, Steve Moore, whose recent passing will leave an impact on our community. Steve was instrumental in the beginnings, the middles, and the nows of Housing Solutions Network. As a cheerleader, as a fundraiser, a donor, a mentor, and a steering committee advisor. He has championed many nonprofits and entities in our community, making this place better for us and the next generation. On behalf of Jefferson Community Foundation and Housing Solutions Network, we'd like to dedicate this evening to Steve Moore and share our gratitude for his love and support over the last 6 years. If we could just have a moment of silence in his name. Thank you all. I also wanted to take a moment and acknowledge the tremendous support we've received from our sponsors for this event. Thank you to our heaviest hitters who have truly earned the title Housing Heroes. New Res Mortgage Lenders, raise your hands. Jefferson Community Foundation, raise your hands. Thank you. We also want to thank the generosity of our community sponsors, champion sponsors, Full Exposures and Chasing Candace, who are with us this evening, documenting this event for the people who couldn't make it. And then thank you to our affordability advocates, Wally Works, Faber and Feinstein, and the Port Townsend paper. Last but not least, our in-kind sponsors include Wave and Wake, that charcuterie board. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Castle and Crown, Finn River, and Bayside Housing Services, along with Social Fabric Brewing for the beverages and the Food Co-op for our sparkling water. So again, please give a round of applause to all of our sponsors who made tonight happen. And now to start tonight's program, I'd like to introduce you to tonight our MC, HSN's own Derek Frenzy. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Liz. As Liz mentioned, my name is Derek Carenzi, and I've been lucky enough to be HSN's network weaver for the last year. And I'm here with you tonight to share with you the work that I've done alongside our small but mighty staff, as well as our team of dedicated volunteers, many of whom are here tonight, including our volunteer steering committee members. Let's give a warm thanks to all these folks who've done so much for us this year. So over the summer, during those beautiful long days before the big dark came, HSN put out 2 surveys to get better data on the impacts of our housing crisis. With the goal of moving past the anecdotal stories you hear all the time, we launched both a community and employer survey with 3 questions in mind. 1, what is the urgency of housing needs in our community? 2, how do housing constraints impact the local economy? And 3, what housing characteristics do community members actually want in relation to affordability? It took many hands to collect this information from across the county, just as it's going to take many hands working together to solve our local housing crisis. I want to give a special thanks to the very hardworking hands of our communication strategist, Eric Jones. He helped take just pages and lines of spreadsheet data and turn them into the beautiful storyboards that you see around the room tonight. Definitely, if you haven't gotten a chance, stick around afterwards. We're going to have time for you to look those over, as well as people positioned there to answer any questions you might have. Before we dive into those numbers, though, I want to take a moment to point out the note cards you all have in front of you this evening. What we have here is that by the end of this night, we want you to jot down some ideas and share them with us. It's got 2 sides. On one of them, whichever one you want to call the front, You can write what's something that really resonated with you, something that you learned tonight that stuck out. And on the other side, write down what can you and we as community members do to lift those around us struggling with housing needs. So, sticking with those, we also know that there's probably going to be more questions that come out of this. And we have a few extra note cards on there. If you want to take notes, jot down those questions, save them till the end when we have that storyboard portion, because we do want to have a great discussion about all these things, but we've got a lot to go over during the presentation. Hold on to the cards, and we'll remind you at the end, and I think we can just begin. Our community survey was created to help move beyond the stories, as I mentioned. And, I mean, let's take a moment. How many of you here know someone who had to leave the community because they couldn't find affordable housing? Yeah, take a moment, look around. That's pretty much everyone here knows someone that they care about who had to leave our community because they couldn't find a place to live that they could afford. These stories are everywhere. You've heard many before, I'm sure, but exactly how prevalent are they? We found 36.6% of the people in our survey, that's more than 1 out of every 3 of your neighbors, doesn't feel secure in their current living situation, with a third of those saying that they need to find a new home in the next year or sooner. We wanted a good representation of the community when we did this, so we took over 3 months to push this survey out with flyers and emails, and as I mentioned, the help of many volunteers. We canvassed local businesses, we went to the food banks all the way down to Brennan and back, we were at the concerts on the dock, the food co-op, everywhere we could find Jefferson County people. We were there trying to get this survey out to as many as we could from as diverse of a population as we could. And with all that work, we were able to secure almost 1,000 unique responses. That's 957 individuals and 39 employers representing 2,085 workers, which is almost 20% of Jefferson County's workforce. You know, all those people were pretty eager to respond because of how bad things are and how hard this area has been hit. We were actually started, HSN, in response to the declared housing crisis in Jefferson County. And a lot of our early focus was on bringing awareness to the necessity of affordable housing at all income levels. I'll even take a moment and pat ourselves on the back here, say that because of all that early work, there is little doubt in our community that affordable housing is a major and important issue. With this project, again, we wanted to make it more tangible, more concrete. So to that end, I'm going to bring up HSN's communication strategist, Eric Jones, and he's going to help start us off answering this first question on housing urgency. Everyone, please welcome Eric Jones.
Well, thank you, Derek, and thank you all for being here. HSN's community and employer surveys pulled in a lot of data, and as Derek said, it was my job to kind of find meaning in it all. So I sought the guidance of Sea Grant economist Kevin Decker, kind of with his guidance was able to translate the spreadsheet lines into the charts and metrics around the room and throughout this presentation. So our hope is that this will all help inform meaningful change in our community. When we started this project, we anticipated being surprised. And one of our biggest surprises was the number of people who are currently cost-burdened by housing. Half of the respondents to our survey indicated that they are spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. This is what is typically defined as unaffordable housing. So let that sink in for a minute. Half of the respondents are living in unaffordable housing. When filtering for only those in the workforce or only those renting, the percentages climb even higher. Perhaps this shouldn't have been a surprise, given where home prices have been sitting for years now. Looking at 2023, the median single-family home sale price was $643,000, which would require a mortgage of about $4,300 a month, which you guys can afford that, right? Our community has also gradually been converting rental units to owner-occupied units, meaning home ownership is increasingly becoming the only way to live here. So looking at this chart, you can see that the number of renter-occupied units was at the bottom in purple, has been trending down since 2012. We've actually lost 738 rental units over this period, bringing rental units down to only 16% of our total housing stock. What can people afford? So in red there represents 80% of our respondents had budgets of no more than $2,500 a month. And that's for everyone, working, not working. In terms of buying in today's market, this means homes that cost no more than $400,000. And as you can see, the majority of these respondents had monthly budgets much less than that $2,500. But just for simplicity's sake, let's pretend homes up to $400,000 were purchasable to those 80% of survey respondents. So again, looking at numbers from 2023, homes under this price only accounted for 17% of all single-family and multifamily home sales on the MLS. The real number for that is there was like 76 homes sold last year under $400,000. 5 years ago, there was 3 times this number of homes available in this price range. Our survey found that of the people currently working and living in Jefferson County, almost a quarter are hoping to buy a home in the next 5 years. One can only wonder how many of these people will actually be able to do so, and what will happen if they can't. Chronically high housing costs are pushing people out of this community and limiting those who can come in. I will now introduce our first storyteller of the night, Raven Salter, who you may recognize from coordinating and working at our beloved Jefferson County Farmers Markets. Raven has been kind enough to share her story with us tonight. Thank you, Raven.
Hi, I want to start by saying that this is the first time I've ever spoken or done a speech, so bear with me if it's not perfect or great or I stumble a little bit. I also brought this because it's really hard for me to talk about, but really important. And so my name is Raven Salter. I'm a single mom. I have 2 kids that are 7 and 9. My 9-year-old is probably on the spectrum. We're getting him evaluated, and he has allergies, which is a lot of doctor's visits regularly and things like that. So as a single mom, it takes up quite a bit of my time, which I love to do because I absolutely love supporting my kids and getting them the resources that they need. We currently are enrolled in the Ocean program, which is half homeschool, half in school, which again takes my time, but it's what my kids need in order to thrive. I've always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, so I want to be able to school my kids. I love it, and I'm super grateful that we have this program in Port Townsend because it really works for us. We've been here for 4 years. We came from North Kitsap, and we moved up here because this is where my dad and stepmom live, and we're living in a trailer, and we could find a place to park our trailer that I could afford. As you heard, I work for the Jefferson County Farmers Market, so a lot of you might have seen me in the information booth on Saturday. I am the site manager assistant, and then on Sunday, I run the show there. I'm the site manager, and I also, in the off-season, work for H&R Block, so you may have seen me in the front desk, helping you get your appointments to work with your tax pros. I also run a jewelry business and do a little bit of that in order to supplement during the winter months when I don't have as much income. I also do a little bit of landscaping, which also, it was something I can bring my kids with. They're not thrilled about it, but they understand. And grandparents help where they can. And then I've, for years and years, always done childcare, and I love that. As my kids get older, they're less thrilled about that too. And I'll speak a little bit more as to why I don't do as much childcare currently. Why I'm here, I don't necessarily feel attached to Port Townsend. Like I said, the school is amazing, which I'm really grateful for. But the biggest reason why we're still here is because grandparents are here. My mom moved here, my dad, my stepmom. They're a crucial part of me being able to work and take care of my kids. And I honestly can't move anywhere else without their support because wouldn't be able to afford having childcare. The living situation we're in now is we've been living in a trailer for the last 6 years. 4 years ago when I moved up here, I bought a brand new trailer, so I'm still working on paying that off because it was better than the rotting, falling apart trailer that we were in before. It was only 20 feet. And I thought we would be in it for 2 or 3 years and we could get into a house because I was gonna push through and make more money and get us there. And as I've increased my monies, the cost of housing has gone up and I'm just constantly chasing that. Last year, I applied for Habitat for Humanity housing. And because some of my jobs were new, they said, hey, you make enough money, but some of your jobs are newer. So our lenders are gonna say no because they're not gonna include all your income. Come back next year and we'd love to get you a house. This year when I came back, both of my jobs had given me a $2 raise, which is huge. Both of my jobs gave me substantially more hours, and I thought I was totally gonna be in the green zone. I was trying not to be hopeful because it really shut me down last year. And when I got there, they said, the pricing of building a house has gone up so high that you actually don't make enough money. So now I'm still in a trailer, and I don't know when I'm gonna be able to get a house for my kids. My son asks me regularly when he can have his own room. He's 9 and he'd like his own space. And all I can tell him is I'm working on it. Because I am still working on getting us housing, but it's hard. Like I said, I'm just constantly chasing. I'm constantly chasing that. And I am getting raises and I am making more money, but I don't know where I can find more time. I also have some medical things that I need to address for myself. And so it's just been really hard. I know that I'm not alone. I know there's lots of people with the same struggle, and I really appreciate you all being here to listen to this story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raven. Let's give another round of applause for Raven, everybody. As I mentioned before, the last 5 years of HSN have been defined by trying to bring awareness to stories like Raven's in this community, as well as solutions to the housing crisis. The next 5 years of our organization, however, is hopefully going to be defined by catalyzing those solutions to help create the affordable housing necessary for our local economy and culture. Next up, I'm going to bring HSN's Steering Committee Chair, Bill Wise, and he's going to share with us the economic constraints caused by the housing crisis that our local employers and businesses have had to reckon with. Please, everybody, welcome up Bill.
That's a tough act to pull. So good evening. It's great to see you all here tonight. HSN wanted to explore how the critical shortage of affordable housing is severely limiting our workforce and hindering businesses, organizations, and governments. This issue affects everyone, even housing secure. When your favorite restaurant struggles to find staff or EMS faces shortages, we all feel the impact of unaffordable housing. Through our employer survey, we asked organizations if housing costs were affecting their operations and growth. Remarkably, more than 80% of the respondents said yes to both questions. Looking closer at the impact of housing has had on our business operations, our survey demonstrated that more than half of businesses reported cost of housing has had a moderate or significant negative impact on their ability to operate. The U.S. Census Bureau indicates 38% of our local workforce commute physically from outside the county or virtually from outside Jefferson County. Many of you are aware that our county's population has aged over the past decade. It's driven not only by an influx of retirees, but surprisingly, also by the exodus of working age residents. Looking at more data from the US Census, you can see here on the chart that there is a decline over the last 10 years. We are steadily losing working age people. That's the blue chart. In the middle, you can see that actually a physical decline in the number of people there from 2010 to 2012. 574 of our survey respondents both live and work in Jefferson County. And of these, 14% are considering relocating outside the county due to housing costs or housing availability. Imagine the impact if 14% of our local workforce left our county. Sorry about that. The fragility of our economy might be more severe than many of us realize. But don't take it from me. Let's hear it from a Jefferson County employer. How the housing crisis is impacting our local government's ability to serve our constituents, its constituents. So please help me welcome to the stage Willie Bentz, Director of Jefferson County's Department of Emergency Management. Come on up, Willie.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me here tonight. My name is Willie Bentz. I'm here representing Jefferson County government, specifically my department, the Jefferson County Department of Emergency Management. We're the smallest singular department in county government, just 3.6 FTEs, but we do quite a bit. We work with an organization called NPREP, or Neighborhood Preparedness, to teach disaster preparedness and encourage folks to become more resilient. We have a number of different volunteer programs. And we manage the Emergency Operations Center, which is where all of the different first responder groups come together and organize during an emergency. I think most of you, though, would probably know us from our work during the COVID-19 pandemic, where we operated vaccine clinics, a call center to help the community, and a number of other different tasks that kind of arose during a 3-year pandemic response. At that time, we were only 2.6 FTEs, with me being the only full-time staff member in the department. So we relied really heavily on volunteers to help us do what we did at that time. We had about 450 community members throughout the response step forward and help us out. We actually had so many volunteer hours that we stopped counting in January of 2022, just because it was such a burden. But coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, I went to my wonderful county commissioners and asked for some help. We have a lot of volunteers. We have a lot of coordination and organization to do. So can I get one more full-time person? And they thankfully agreed. As we were conducting interviews, we selected a candidate who had emergency management experience in Denton County, Texas. She was about to get her master's degree in geology. She actually worked the vaccine clinic at the Texas Motor Speedway, which put our kind of small backcountry vaccine clinics to shame. But when we asked her about, well, do you understand the housing situation in the area? She said it was her dream to live on the Olympic Peninsula. She had visited as a child. She has family friends in the area. And it's really the one place she's targeted as where she wanted to live the very most. We hired her. She had family friends nearby, thankfully, so she had a place to stay all the way out in Kingston. Unfortunately, though, 9 months of commuting every day from Kingston and unable to find somewhere for her, her partner, and their 2 very large dogs, she accepted a position in Clark County, Washington, and left us shortly thereafter. It took us 9 months to replace that position. We have a great local candidate. We're back up and running. But for a department that small, it was a really big impact to us to lose such a valued contributor to this community. That's not a new story for anyone in this room. You saw everyone's hands go up in the beginning. Not a new story throughout county government. We recently lost another department director making $130,000 a year after just 4 months. After getting outbid cash on a few homes, they decided to leave the area. So there are many folks within county government who make $20 an hour, about $36.20 a month. And for a $1,500 a month apartment, that's 43% of their income, well over that 30% threshold in terms of keeping housing affordable. So we struggled through this, not just within my department, but across county government. I know I speak on behalf of a lot of different organizations who feel the same way. But there are a number of things we are actively trying to do in county government to help improve the situation. Resolution 35-17 was passed by the county, declaring an affordable housing emergency in the area. We've helped OLECAP build Seventh Haven, which provided 43 units of affordable housing in the area. Helped OLECAP with the Caswell Brown, which has units for 50 unhoused individuals. Through the American Rescue Plan Act, we provided $500,000 of funding for Evans Vista to the city of PT, as well as another $500,000 to Habitat for Humanity for the Mason Street project. Recently, county received $60,000 worth of grant funding to help out with the comprehensive plan, which we're currently updating now. And last but certainly not least, with the Hadlock Sewer project fully underway, we're hopefully very soon going to be able to provide opportunities for greater housing density in the Hadlock area. I'm here tonight for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, this impacts me and my work and the county government I work for. My wife also told me I had to be here. But there are a lot of ways in which housing impacts our resiliency and our disaster preparedness that I don't think a lot of people kind of initially realize. There have been studies that have shown, as one example, that renters are less likely to get prepared for a disaster than homeowners. They may not be able to afford emergency supplies because rent is so high. They're moving so often, they're not going to stash a bunch of supplies and carry that with them every move. They also can't make changes to a building that they don't necessarily own. But although in my line of work, I mostly worry and plan for when folks lose their home due to wildfire or floods or earthquake of things of that nature, I think it's really important to note that there are folks living that disaster every single day where they don't know how they're going to afford rent next month. They need to find a home and need to find it soon, or else they're going to be leaving the area. They have no other options. So having said that, I just really want to say I appreciate the work everyone is doing in this room. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And yeah, thank you all. Very appreciate it.
Give it up for Willie Bentz, everybody. All right. Well, I think so far it's probably pretty clear at this point that we need housing that is more affordable. But what does that housing actually look like? With our survey, we asked questions like, what housing types would you consider living in? And what size living space would be sufficient for your current situation? These questions were intentionally phrased with affordability in mind. Rather than a shoot for the moon approach, we instead shot for what we all care about most. And to present on those housing characteristics that our community cares about, please welcome back Eric Jones.
Hello again. All right, with this survey, we really wanted to collect some data that helped inform development and municipal code language so that it aligns with community values. We have put together some detailed charts here on the housing characteristics storyboard, which I actually forgot where we put that one. I think it's over there. Yeah, that's the one. I'll be standing over there later, so you come talk in detail about those. So we have some details there, and we're gonna have even more in a forthcoming report that we'll be printing that Derek mentioned earlier. But I don't wanna hit you with too many numbers because I could go on all day with those. But there are a few things we wanted to highlight. First, what kind of housing works? So perhaps it comes as no surprise that most respondents could see themselves living in detached single-family homes. This aligns with what the majority of Jefferson County's housing stock is, but unfortunately, these tend to be most expensive and the least dense type of housing. So it was more interesting to find that 41% of respondents would consider living in a duplex, triplex, or quad. However, these account for only 3% of our housing stock. The good news here, though, is that these are housing types that many of our local builders have the expertise to construct. Row houses also trended high relative to other housing types, followed by apartment buildings under 20 units, particularly for people looking to rent. But similar to duplexes, triplexes, and quads, these represent a very small percentage of our overall housing stock. Compared to single-family homes, all of these types are typically more economical to build, require less public infrastructure, and less land clearing per unit. And they can also concentrate more people closer to essential services and decrease their reliance on personal cars for transportation. Looking at housing size, we found that 2 out of 3 respondents would be comfortable in 1,200 square feet or less. On top of that, more people indicated their homes were bigger than their needs, as opposed to the opposite, suggesting that larger footprint homes could be redistributed if there were appropriate homes to downsize into, which frankly I found encouraging, especially considering nationwide the average home being built is now over 2,000 square feet. Looking here at outside space, we found a similar theme. Almost 70% said they don't need more than a small yard and or some combination of public or common space. We also inquired about amenity type characteristics and had respondents select the ones that were most essential. So among the 22 that we listed, it was actually interesting to find architectural design was among the lowest ranked items. And for people currently renting, it was in fact the lowest. Aesthetics are no doubt important, and I don't mean to suggest otherwise with this statistic. But it is important to be honest of how housing facades can add to housing costs. And it might just be worth encouraging less costly ways to add character and curb appeal to homes, especially when many are struggling to find safe and secure places to live. So what were the amenities people cared about? The top ranked amenities were open green spaces, in-home laundry, and pet-friendly units. Which something about that triptych really makes me smile. It's so simple and not very materialistic. Add to that, commuting distance was a close fourth for those working, and distance to stores was a fourth for those not working. So looking at all these characteristics together, dense living might already be a commonly shared value. Modest sized homes on smaller lots, close to services, and adjoined open green spaces. To me, this speaks to how we are a community that recognizes the value in closeness and connection with our neighbors. Well, and we don't want anyone to see our dirty laundry. Our next storytellers are a landlord and tenant duo, here to share the benefits that multifamily living can have on ourselves, our neighbors, and our community. Please welcome Jordan and Jennifer to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer James Wilson, and it's nice to be among you this evening. Thank you for your work, all the work that's been put together. We did not read that survey before we put together our remarks, but I'm here with Jordan, and I'm a little bit shy about telling this story, our story, but it's also really close to my heart and our sense of community. I'll give you a little bit of background on my part in this story, and that is that after 25 years of working at and publishing The Leader, Scott Wilson and I sold our business and retired. With the proceeds from that business, we took some time to think through how we wanted to invest our nest egg. What we arrived at was putting some part of that back into the community in the form of affordable rental housing. We contacted longtime friends of ours, Abby Carlson and Alex Little, to enlist them in finding the right property for us. We gave them our wish list: in town, charming, a yard with trees, in good shape and ready to rent, and a pretty restrictive price limit. We told them that we were willing to pay cash, and they humored us by saying, sure, okay, we can find that place, sure, we'll keep an eye out. Within a month or two, Abby called me and said she had a property that I should really take a look at. So while Scott was out of town, we put in an offer on a sweet little compound built in 1942 as a multiplex housing for mill workers on one legal lot. The sellers were a retired couple that had moved to Port Townsend to enroll in the wooden boat school program and to paint. Together, they had fixed up the 3 units one by one while living in one unit and doing the repairs on the others. Upon seeing the cottage and duplex, I could feel their gentle spirits at work, quirky and sincere, and I was smitten. Since then, we've had some turnover in renters, and with one exception, the moving was related to relationship changes, employment opportunities, or being closer to families. On only one occasion was a 1-year lease mutually broken because of the incompatibility of the above and below residents. The buildings are close, storage and yard space is shared, the living arrangements are independent, but are also under the very best of circumstances communal. A key moment in this story was 5 years ago, almost to the day. I received a call from Mark Smith responding to my cottage for rent ad in the Leader. He was not the first person to respond, but I was waiting. The cottage had been recently vacated by a long-time renter who moved to Idaho for love. And next door, the lower unit in the house was occupied by a really sweet couple, one of whom was a trumpet player, and Christian, a childhood friend of my twins who had moved back to town to start a business and who was also in a band. Mark immediately made a favorable impression on me. He was soft-spoken, articulate, meticulous in his manner, and kind of familiar. He told me that he originally came to PT from Seattle a couple of years before to be with his mother, but having recently lost her and the lease they shared, and it being so close to Christmas, this was a really tough time. Mark had his mother's elderly Chihuahua, Rex, and his own elderly bulldog, Rocco. And even though the ad stated absolutely no smoking and no pets, he was honest about both, and we signed the lease anyway. I had a feeling that he and we were going to be a good match. Quickly, Mark became the unofficial mayor of the neighborhood. He knew everybody, not just his immediate next-door neighbors and landmates, but those up and down the street and around the corner, and knew their animals and their children too. It can't be understated that he did get into their business. He spent a lot of time outside smoking and keeping an eye on things. He was very particular and opinionated about the upkeep of the yard, doing what he was able to do, and supervising those who did the other, more major tasks. Inevitably, there was a mismatch with the person I normally worked with on house and lawn care projects, and so we shifted those duties over to Christian, whose yard care Mark respected and with whom there was mutual tenderness. There was at least 1 year, maybe 2, when Mark ran a Christmas cottage out of a storage shed in the backyard, a sale of sorts, pay what you can, and to promote some Christmas cheer for people in the neighborhood and the broader community. He also, at one point, offered to house a neighbor's cat so that she could go to rehab. He counseled another neighbor on her domestic matters. He frequently checked in with me to make sure I was okay with his offerings and ideas, and permission was given, eventually even setting aside a memorial space for his loved ones. In the spring of 2022, another vacancy sent me back to the classifieds to find a tenant for the smallest unit, the upstairs apartment in the other house. The sweet couple moved back to Michigan, and Christian and his girlfriend, Leanna, took over the downstairs home, leaving the tiny upstairs apartment open. Several people answered the ad, and 4 or 5 submitted applications. From his deck on the porch, his deck/porch next door, Mark, Rex, and Rocco viewed our prospects as they passed by. A single man working security for the mill offered to pay twice the stated rent, but wasn't right. An engaged couple didn't pass Mark's temperament or relationship radar at all. He said the marriage would never last. And just as I was about to sign a lease with a quiet writer who lived and worked in Port Townsend for a nonprofit part-time, Mark gave me this review. She was okay, but not great with dogs. He also told me that he dreamt it was someone with a medical background that was going to live there. Some memories get stacked, one on top of the other, but my memory is that not long after this conversation, which we can also call a premonition, with Mark, perhaps even the same day, I received a call from someone who worked at the hospital and who had heard from someone that I had a one-bedroom apartment for rent. My memory is that Jordan came by that very same day.
After reviewing and applying to many local housing opportunities that were significantly beyond my budget or generally inhabitable, I was discouraged and trying not to get my hopes up as I drove toward a rental property that bore a single descriptor in the leader classifieds: one-bedroom, upstairs apartment of a 1940s cottage. The moment I stepped foot into the charming, sun-soaked apartment, tears welled up in my eyes. I knew that I wanted to be the one to live there with the slanted ceilings and the built-in ironing board, but I also knew that there was likely a huge amount of interest in such an affordable gem. So while I filled out an application, I again tried not to get my hopes up. On my way out of the apartment viewing, I commented to Jennifer on the yellow exterior of the house. Little did I know, Mark, the vetting committee next door, was listening in. He appreciated my noticing and mentioned it to Jennifer as a point in my favor. By the grace of Mark, and of course Jennifer, I was the newest landmate of the compound by May of 2022. When I signed the lease, I asked Jennifer if we were able to get packages delivered to the apartment, and she replied, yes, the mayor directs all the mail to the right place around here. I got to know Mark, a 6'4", chronically ill, disabled gay man in his late 50s, quickly. We became acquainted through day-to-day pleasantries, and soon enough he would invite me over for drinks on his porch, with the caveat that I'd climb over his railing with my cup of tea because he wasn't quite ready for me to come in via his front door. In time, myself and our other landmate, Christian, who was around my age, also became friends. One afternoon, he told me his band was going to be playing at Port Townsend Pride, and he suggested I come. I mustered up the courage, and I asked Mark to be my date to my first ever Pride, and he agreed. He brought his disabled parking pass, and I brought the snacks. We drove together downtown with a pit stop at the Tobacco Depot for Mark along the way. At Pride, Mark walked slowly with his cane while we moseyed around at a pace his chronic pain would allow. We bought a set of pride flags for the compound, his traditional, and mine progress. When our landmate was finally up on stage, with his cane hung from the crook of his elbow, Mark took photos of Christian and his band from every possible angle, while I stood back, realizing I was suddenly part of a little community. Snapped this picture after the official flag raising. I shared it with Jennifer, thanking her for bringing us unlikely friends together. Summer went on, and Mark eventually let me through his front door. Shortly after that, I was driving him to appointments and sitting in the lobby while he visited with his many doctors. One day, with a shy smirk on his face, he convinced me to give him his weekly injection in his butt so he wouldn't have to have bruised and tender thighs anymore. I, of course, obliged, and he immediately, not so shy anymore, dropped trow. Over the fall and winter, we continued to look out for each other as our lives changed, myself leaving the medical field and Mark deciding not to drive, selling his car and becoming homebound. While I wasn't privy to the details at the time, Mark's health seemed to wax and wane, but despite it all, he remained a steadfast porch observer. teasing me with curiosity about romantic interests if he noticed I stayed out later than usual, researching and coordinating a repair appointment after my car window was shattered by a neighbor, and regaling me with tales about the UPS guy and his nice legs. In February of 2023, after a quick hospital stay for pneumonia that had seemingly resolved, Mark called me having difficulty breathing. We urgently returned to the hospital, and by the end of the weekend, we received the news: terminal lung cancer. On the drive home from the hospital, we decided to get matching tattoos.
Mark reached out to me to ask if I could come by. Over his 5-shot venti half and half with whipped cream, Mark let me know, sadly, that his health had taken a turn for the worse. It was clear that he was very, very sick. He told me that he was in good hands with Jordan and a bit weepy, that he was very grateful for them. I can't remember if I said that it was he who had summoned Jordan in the first place or not, but we both knew and had talked about the angels watching over him, and that at this point in his journey, he could not have had anyone better than Jordan at his side. We also talked about one of his favorite serial novels, Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City, and how he, Mark, had created a tiny version of the intertwined lives of that storied apartment building at 28 Barbary Lane in San Francisco.
In April of 2023, after 2 months of palliative treatment, I had the great honor of holding Mark's hand as he passed away. As I settled into life without the big guy next door, I quickly realized I could not imagine coming home and seeing somebody else sitting on his porch. So I asked Jennifer what she thought about me moving next door. Of course, she obliged, and I moved across the yard and into the cottage in July of 2023. In early fall, the community of people that Mark had woven together bundled up in blankets and gathered for a memorial dinner on his porch. Well, Mark isn't around anymore. I am reminded of him in the spring when his tulips pop up in my garden, or when the owl that sat perched within arm's reach at his memorial dinner returns to visit us, or when I catch a glimpse of the family memorial where Mark's mom, his bulldog Rocco, and finally Mark rest in spirit. I so badly want to sit on the porch and tell him that I accidentally fell in love with a friend that I convinced Jennifer to fill my former apartment vacancy with. He would love to gossip about the tin can phone Christopher and I strung up between the houses that started it all. He would relish an opportunity to remind me that the property is magic. Well, Mark is right, the property is special. What ultimately makes it magical is the community it created and continues to create to this day.
We think that Mark would love the stories that we are telling today. He would love the community that continues in his wake. He would be proud. That his legacy has helped to model. This is the part where that his legacy has helped to model what it means to live in relationship and to be in community, both as a giver and a recipient of goodness and good people all around. This is the way that he's remembered.
Thank you both so much. I mean, I didn't think I was going to cry tonight. I'm sure everybody else knew that I was going to cry tonight because that's what I do. But powerful stories. So what does this mean for all of us? We heard a lot of data tonight, some incredible stories, and there's so much to share with y'all, but we did want to synthesize a few takeaways. The housing crisis not only impacted our friends and family, but has also had detrimental consequences on our local businesses and our economy. Creating more housing will help alleviate the pressures of our community feels, but only if we create the right type of housing. The need for affordable homes spans cross segments of our workforce, as does the desire for modest-sized housing. Both those seeking housing security and those trying to downsize find themselves competing against each other for what we have traditionally considered a starter home or homes with smaller footprints. So, what can be done? Well, first of all, government entities can support developments of a multitude of housing types through zoning regulations, density increases, and prioritizing permitting of developments that meet our local workforce's needs. We can remove concepts like aesthetics from our codes and focus on housing our workforce in our own community. Landlords can price rentals at rates for working individuals and families, or consider selling units at prices that support local wage earners. An equation that we learned from the Metro Housing Trust is your cost, which is your mortgage, plus 10% for incidentals can equal affordable rent. Housing providers can create housing types and desired amenities, offering both for rent or purchase. Eric shared tonight that we've lost over 700 units of rentals in our community in the last 10 years. However, let's not forget, though, unless we implement some form of affordability protections, the solutions of today will not house the workforce of tomorrow. So how can you help tonight? Well, we need to shift to how HSN needs your help. And with that, I need a little help from one of my friends. Bill, can you join me up here? So after all this, we have to ask ourselves, how can you and the audience help tonight? HSN is the only nonprofit focused solely on workforce housing through advocating, creating resources, and informing our community. We've set a donation envelope on the table, place settings, cash, check, or card can be accepted at this evening. We just really want to thank you all for your ongoing support.
So absolutely, Liz. Our work is supported by donations from this community. Without your financial contribution, we will not be able to do this kind of work. Our budget is a little over $200,000. That's a pretty modest budget. It supports our small staff, volunteer outreach, and events like tonight's event. While modest, HSN's budget generates significant impact in raising awareness, advocating for affordable housing, but we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Sign up for our newsletter, okay? Stay on top of events and resources, including our advocacy alerts, to know where to show up and when. Communications like this help direct our community what's happening and how they can stay informed. Engage and share with your friends, your family, and your neighbors. As a network, our power lies in our community members and connections. We are only as strong as our relationships. And help us create stronger relationships across our community, all in the name of housing. Derek's gonna wrap us up and take us to the rest of the evening.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, we're almost done, I promise. I know it's been a lot, but before you leave, remember the note cards we talked about before? There's a box for you to drop them off at the front where you checked in tonight. We've had about 30 more minutes left that we want to encourage conversation at the storyboards. So please walk around, look, talk, ask questions. Those storyboards are also available on the QR code on the back of your program. So you can take that home with you, share it with your neighbors, discuss the solution that you wrote down on the back of your card. Keep the conversation going, please. We're going to continue this work by printing a physical report. And that is going to include the responses you give us tonight on the note cards, within all the rest of the data and the things we couldn't share with you in the last hour. So we're going to put that out sometime mid-December, maybe is what we're hoping. But you need to really sign up for the newsletter. That way we can keep you informed of when it's coming. And finally, we want to thank our storytellers one more time. We want to thank our sponsors. Of course, the Northwest Maritime Center for hosting us here tonight. And then I want to thank everyone who took our survey and all of you folks for coming out here tonight. Thank you so much. Cheers.